are live. Let me get live on the Instagram. And we'll get into it for a little something here. Okay, I think we good there. All right, there we go. All right, I'm gonna give it a minute or two. Yes, as usual, this is kind of spur of the moment thing. Make it work. All right, so we're live on Instagram and Facebook. Just give me a couple minutes. We'll let some people come in the room, and then we'll go ahead and begin. All right. All right. All righty. So we give it another minute or two, and all right, I'm gonna run through some announcements in a minute. Infernal blessings to those slowly creeping in the room on this Wednesday evening. Infernal blessings, Brother Gio Sanchez, Devon McLean, Vision TG. What's going on, brother? So welcome you guys to the room. I appreciate that, Gio. Appreciate you tuning in. We're going to get it in a little bit tonight. Man, I can't get this thing positioned right. There we go. I think that's better. There we go. Let's turn this puppy this way just a bit too. You got to excuse me. Let me just do that. Bear with me for a minute. I'm trying to get this IG shit straight. All right. There we go. All right. All right, so let me run through some quick announcements while we wait a few more minutes. Get that out the way, as I like to always do in the beginning of the video, kind of keep you guys up on the latest happenings and going on. So first and foremost, upcoming classes for the rest of this month. Let me go through that real quick. I like to pull the dates up to be exact so I don't mess them up. All right. All right, so our next class, we have this Saturday, April 16th, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Left-Hand Path North, Mythology and Runes class. A lot of people have inquired and asked to do something in regards to this. So this will only be a couple of classes. It's not going to be an ongoing series on Patreon like the other classes. We'll probably do a couple in this. I encourage, again, the best way to participate in all the classes on a monthly basis is to go to patreon.com /Baniti, Baniti, and join tier 3, which is $25 a month. And that gives you access to the classes, which is about 3 a month, and the monthly ritual, or you can pay individually for each class. So this is going to apply to all the ones that I'm saying, which is $56 per class, and you can pay by either PayPal or you can pay by Cashapp. But it makes more sense to be a tier 3 member on Patreon. It's a better value, and you're going to get a lot more for your money. So I would encourage you. That's the 2 ways to participate in the monthly classes. Okay, so that's the first one on Saturday, April 16th. And then the following week, Friday, April 22nd. This is only for tier 3 members and above on Patreon. The Rite of Arachne, the Spider Goddess. We will be doing a ritual working with the archetype Arachne, and it'll be just a brief description. It'll be focusing on, again, going into the inner depths of our subconscious mind and how we can transform ourselves and fix, repair, shape our destiny by going within, as far as, again, embracing, like we do in shadow work, the good and the bad. And once you have an understanding of that good and bad, then you can start that transformational process. So that's the gist of the ritual. And for those participating, you'll get more information on that as we go along. And then on the 30th, Saturday, April 30th, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Klipathic Yoga Meditation and Kundalini Awakening class. That will be on 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Saturday, April 30th. This is class number 5. This is an ongoing series. A lot to cover in that class. It's an important class. I designed that class to focus on a lot of important techniques that to me is very, very critical to your spiritual growth and development. Obviously, proper meditation. Concentration must be obtained first before obviously you can get to those higher states of meditation. So very important, proper breathing. We go through the science of breath in there, working with the chakras, how to raise the Kundalini energy, which is not always a pleasant thing, contrary to the shit that you hear. I laugh at some of the stuff I hear where everybody's always talking about this fucking kumbaya Kundalini raising. I never hear anybody talk about some of the intense and painful aspects of it, mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. It's a process. Cleansing techniques, cleansing and grounding, which is very important. All of these things are critical in your growth. Mantras, we go in depth in vibrational frequencies, the power of mantras, because we use mantras. It's a big thing that we do on this path and a lot of our ritualistic work. So all of these things are key. It's an ongoing series. So I would encourage, again, to participate in all these classes and rituals. The best thing for you to do, again, is go to patreon.com/Baniti, BANITI, and join Tier 3. That'll give you access to all of those classes and rituals. Also, if you're interested in a spiritual reading, just throw a few out there that I offer: Klipathic demonic readings, shadow work reading, which is a great place to start, because a lot of new people, and not just new people, sometimes people get to a point on their journey they don't know what direction to go into, what to do next. Well, in a case like that, a shadow work reading is good because it's going to focus on what you got going on at this current moment in your life and what direction the spirits are leading you in, so you know you're doing the proper work, right? So that's a good place to start. Deity readings to see what type of spirits and energies walk with you. Egyptian oracle readings. That's a lot of people are requesting that. That's been big the last couple of months. Readings with Santa Muerte and the spirits of the dead, or spiritual consultation, which can be used for anything you decide you want to use it for. It's basically a question and answer. Whatever questions you have, if you need guidance on the path, if you're dealing with a certain situation, it's basically that, a consultation. But for a full list of any of the, those readings, services, and prices, shoot me an email, khnum19@gmail.com, and I will send you an email with a list of all those services and the prices, and I'll give you that information. Also, I want to pump out there the Journey of the Black Adept Conference, October 27th to the 30th, Thursday evening in October. We'll have the meet and greet like we did last year. Friday and Saturday be classes and workshops all day. Rituals on Friday and Saturday night. And then Sunday, we close it out with an open question and answer discussion forum. So it's a wonderful 4-day event. This will be our 5th year doing it. We got back to doing it live last year after the pandemic, the previous year doing it virtually. So we're hoping to see some new people out there this year. Pretty much for the moment, looks like we'll have it at the same venue we did last year. Very convenient. The event will be in Hollywood, Florida, right in the heart of downtown Hollywood, Florida. Close access to everything in the area, walking distance. You're minutes away from the beach. You're close to shopping, restaurants, Airbnbs, hotels, you name it. It's a prime location. I know people sending emails asking. You fly into Fort Lauderdale, Hollywood Airport. Anyway, if you need information on that, how to register, where to look for lodging, shoot us an email. As you know, we prepare for this early every year, and we keep it the same time every year, the last weekend in the month of October. It's a great event to come to if you're on this path, meet fellow practitioners. As you know, a lot of people, one thing they always come to me with is they live in an area and there's not a lot of people that practice this path. Some areas, right? If you're not in a more populous area. So this is a good event to kind of link up with some people who are on the path. So hopefully we see some new people out there. And then also I want to throw out there this Sunday night, we have a special show. It'll be right here live on Primordial Chaos YouTube, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We are going to have the Sister, the Cosmic Serpent, on the show. And she will be talking about, her experiences as a left-hand path occult practitioner, being female and also being a melanated female. It's a good experience for her to share with other women in general out there, but especially melanated women, because as I've said before, in my opinion, I don't think there's a strong enough female presence on this path. So it's good to get females on here. I tried to do something like that a couple of years ago, so I'm going to try to get some more female guests on to share their perspective, and let them talk about their experiences as practitioners on this path. I mean, even whether you're male or female, it's not a mainstream path, as we know. It's becoming more widespread. I've talked about that. I do think in certain areas it's becoming very commercialized and cornball, because there's a lot of stuff out there being labeled quote unquote occult left-hand path. And in my opinion, it's really not. It's a lot of watered down bullshit mixed with other bullshit, and people are calling it the occult or left-hand path. But we will have the Sister, the Cosmic Serpent, on this Sunday night, April 17th, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I will put notifications out that day just to remind everybody. Hopefully we get everybody a good turnout, good presence. You'll be able to ask the sister some questions. If you have anything, we'll open up the forum for you guys to ask those questions. You can call in or you could ask live in the chat. So we have that coming up on this upcoming Saturday, April 17th, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I think that covers pretty much most of the announcements, the Patreon, the upcoming classes, the rituals, readings, consultations, the Journey of the Black Adept Conference number 5. Oh, and the last thing, I always forget, check out also, I have a podcast now, the Primordial Chaos Podcast, where I do 30-minute segments. It's been up for a few months. You can catch it pretty much on any podcast platform, Spotify, Amazon, Anchor.fm, Radio Public, pretty much every major podcast platform you can catch it on. So also check that out, support that. And I think that covers everything that I kind of wanted to run through in the beginning. All right, so you see the topic here. I want to talk a little bit about this. I've been doing or was recently coming across something. I've been studying this. There's a book that I've mentioned a few times over the last couple of years on the show called Wrathful Chaos, the 5 books of satanic philosophy. There's a lot of powerful information in this book. As I've mentioned in previous live streams, it's out of print. I know you can get excerpts of it on Scribd or Scribd. But I know it's out of print. You can't get the whole thing. Even if you go to the website, lionofsatan.com, that's the actual website. I know they were trying to get it back in print, but this is the book right here, Wrathful Chaos, the 5 books of satanic philosophy. As in the other YouTube videos I've done referencing this book, as I did in those previous ones, I also want to make it clear, this is not really a beginner book. I just want to make that clear. It doesn't mean you can't read it, inquire about it. I don't think the work in here is suitable for a beginner. It's just my advice. I try to guide people on the path the right way, especially those who may be more newer. I'm not talking about to some of you watching who are more experienced practitioners, so that don't apply to you. I don't recommend this as a book for a beginner. So I want to put that out there because I will be making some reference to some information in there. Doesn't mean you can't read it. I don't recommend this as a book out the gate to do ritual work from it, et cetera, because it really deals with some intense topics, death, various aspects of death, the void and the abyss, which we'll talk a little bit about that. It deals with the very controversial topic of suicide and how that applies to spirituality, which can be a little bit intense if reading it from this perspective. So not something I would encourage beginners to work with right out the gate is what I'm trying to say. Okay. So I want to put that out there. So I want to talk about, let me just clear this out. Hold on. All right. So you see the title, Chaos, the Sitra Ahra and the Afterlife. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. One thing, obviously, that always comes up, I've mentioned it here. It's definitely one of the motivating factors why a lot of us are on this path is this mystery of what the afterlife / death is, what happens after death. How does that tie into the work that we do? Well, when you're working with, whether it's the Sitra Ahra, the tree of death / the Klepothic tree, you are trying to demystify and remove the fears of the understanding of that. Why is this important? And why it's an integral part of the work on the path of the occult? Because mainstream religions, right-hand path philosophies, things of that nature, use it as a fear tactic to control people, right? So this concept of death, right, is the number one contributing factor that a lot of these religions use to keep people under mental mind control, right? It's if you behave, you'll get rewarded. You're going to go somewhere where, life is going to be easy. You're going to be floating on clouds, hanging out with little fat kids in diapers and all that stupidity, all that mythological, comical bullshit, right? If you behave, if you follow the rules, right? But if you don't, then they compound the fear with you're going to burn in some eternal damnation. You're going to be tortured and et cetera, et cetera. We know all the mythological philosophy that they throw at you when it comes to that. So it eliminates the concept. There is no such thing as free will as religion falsely teaches, because there is consequences and a price to pay for free will. If you say it's free, right? Free means just that. It's free. Yeah, it's free to do whatever you want at the moment, but then they follow it up with, but if you don't essentially do what those religions say and follow those rules and regulations, there's prices to pay. So there's no such thing, according to religious theology, as free will, right? It's just like if I tell you, hey, you don't have to do this, you don't have to do that, do what you want. And then I turn around when you make a decision that goes against what I don't like and I punish you. That's essentially what the God of the Bible does, right? Tells you have free will, and then you get punished for exercising your will and going in the opposite direction of what that religious theology teaches. So I bring that out because it's a serious mind control tactic. It's serious mental fuckery and really getting up inside your head, which creates the feelings and the emotions of guilt. And this is why some people have a hard time, unattaching themselves to these religions, right? It's somebody who's been in them for a long time, and it's hard for them to shift into another path or spiritual system. So it creates serious problems. Okay. So demystifying this thing, what is the other side? What is the afterlife? What is the Sitra Ahra? What is the real breakdown of chaos? Right? There's an aspect of the demiurge connected there. We'll talk a little bit about that. What are these things, these concepts? What do they mean? What do they represent? Well, some of the stuff I'm going to go through briefly, the demiurge will come up. And let me tell you what the demiurge is not. Okay, I know there's different concepts out there. There's different teachings of what that represents. There's different ways it's explained. And as I've said before, you make the judgment and the conclusion, but there's a concept and a theory Yeah, Raven put the link to the podcast, and Raven, I would also encourage you. You have a podcast. I'd also encourage you to put your link in there, and I'd encourage you guys to check her podcast out. So if you are still there, put your link in too, and let people check out your podcast too. So let's talk about what it's not. I want to make this clear. There is some concepts out there where people talk about archons, which some of you might be familiar with. I've heard concepts where people say these are beings that try to destroy and devour you, and that we're food for the archons, blah blah blah, and all that stuff. I don't subscribe to that school of thought at all. Okay, I don't believe that's religious in nature, and I'm gonna tell you why. If you believe, you can't turn around on one flip side and say you practice the concept of apotheosis, self-deification, self-mastery, that you're a god or a goddess, but then you're going to turn around and say that there are some beings that you are inferior to that can destroy, eat, devour, and kill you. That is just completely fucking ridiculous to me. Okay, so that's not the concept of the demiurge we'll be presenting here, because there is an aspect of that connected to the Sitra Ahra, chaos, the afterlife. We'll talk a little bit about that. And it's really, really getting into the understanding of the deep inner depths of your subconscious mind, because the subconscious mind is where it all exists. Okay. It's where you create and destroy everything. It's where your emotions, your fears, your anxieties, your joys, your happiness, your sadness, all these things. Okay. You create these things based on your experiences, what you've been through, what you've absorbed. We'll talk a little bit about that. So I just want to make that part clear. So let's start. I'll go through this, and as I do, I'll come back to the chat. So be patient. I'll come back to the chat with the questions when I'm done, and I'll go right in order. All right. I want to point out one thing I pointed out before I get into the section that I had here. Understanding what magic is and what magic is not, right? So I want to briefly run through that understanding, which, again, I talked about this on a previous one. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. You can catch that one. I can't remember what show that was. It was a while back, a little bit over a year and some change ago, more than likely. But magic is the science of understanding oneself and one's conditions, right? What does that mean? Magic isn't doing the shit you see on the internet and YouTube. Magic is more than just putting on black robes and doing spells and rituals and invocations, though those are ritualistic practices that are part of it. But what is the very core fabric and science of magic? Why does one want to come on this path and be a black magician, a black adept, an occult practitioner, whatever title floats your boat? They're just titles. It's for that reason right there, to understand one's self. What I've been saying for years is the first thing you should be seeking on this path before anything else. Before you come on this path looking for all the glory, because people come on this path out the gate, as I've said many times before, for all the wrong reasons, for materialistic shit, for sexual stuff, for power and glory. Yes, power is key, because you should have some level of power, because when you have power, you have a certain level of control. That's a whole nother aspect. But when you don't have this principle first, the science of understanding oneself and one's conditions, right? Via shadow work. This is why when you come on the path, you must understand where you are at all times and moments in your life. What is going on around you? What is going on inside of you? And what is going on outside of you, around you? Because usually what's going on the inside reflects what you got going on the outside, right? So your work should always be designed on those precepts, okay? So magic is the science, okay, of understanding oneself and one's conditions. So I'm trying to remove the spookism out of the shit, okay? I'm trying to remove the spookism out of it, because people, and I'm not talking more so people that might be watching that are on this path. I'm not speaking to you guys. I'm talking to the outsiders who have this warped interpretation of what the occult, left-hand path, and black magic really is, right? That's the understanding. It is the art of applying that understanding in action, though. So what I've been saying for years, how you comprehend and understand that knowledge, you need to put that into practice. That's how you get results. So you could read a million books, you could study all of this, you could study that, you can regurgitate all this information, but if you can't put that knowledge into practice, it's pointless. It's that simple, right? So this is why I say, Pete, you're supposed to be a living example of of the knowledge you claim you have, because knowledge is power. That's where the power comes from, the knowledge, right? And the only way that knowledge can be substantiated is you showing your wisdom and understanding of that knowledge. By how? By putting it into practice, utilizing that knowledge to do what all of our goal, what everybody's goal on this path is to get results for a beneficial outcome for something specific for ourselves, right? That's why you should have this kind of understanding, because then your approach is going to be completely different. Because again, as I said earlier, I see people come on this path seeking all of those things that I mentioned a few minutes ago first: money, sex, power. And yes, those things come when you put knowledge of self and understanding yourself first. That's my point. There's nothing wrong with those things, right? Everybody, has the right to obtain and also achieve their desires, but that shouldn't be the first most important thing on your list to do, and it shouldn't be the key component or reason why you come on this path. I've mentioned this before over the years. This is why I ask people, and it's funny because it's almost like they pause and they overthink, and it's like they're looking for some rehearsed, prepared answer. I always ask people, why did you come on this path? What is your purpose? What are you trying to gain by coming on this path? Especially if you came from somewhere that this is completely extreme, right? It's going completely opposite way. I always like to know what sparked you. What was your purpose? How did you get here? And what are you trying to accomplish? And as long as I hear something along the lines to master myself, to gain knowledge of myself, anything that's in accordance to this, right, then you're here for the right reasons. But I've heard some crazy shit too that I just shake my head and go, are you fucking kidding me? Right? So again, you're approaching your intent, as we talked about in previous classes, is very important. I guarantee you 9 out of 10 times, if you're coming right out the gate with your intent just for materialistic shit, you're going to have a rough time. I'm going to tell you that right out the gate. Okay. I say that simply because you could have a lot of other shit going on in your life that needs to be attended to. You could have a lot of personal chaos, internal chaos, external chaos, family problems, mental and emotional problems, financial problems, etc. You can't bypass that, as I've said before in the past, and then just go jump in and do some work and think it's going to fix that without it, do other things and start trying to chase after materialistic things, et cetera, et cetera. And you got a lot of issues you need to fix about yourself. It don't work like that, right? All right, so that's the basic understanding of magic, right? It's a simple excerpt that I wanted to point out, and I think that's a great thing where you can remove the spookism. Even if somebody asks you, because I'm sure we all know people, whether it's family, friends, or just people we know who might know that we're on this path to some degree, and they're spooked out about it. They think you're some satanic worshiper killing children and animals, and because they got the Hollywood interpretation of it, and they got the social media, internet, conspiracy interpretation of it. That's a great way to take the spookism out of it and explain to them, this is what I do, right? That's the real breakdown of magic. It puts it in a whole different context. It takes away all of that conspiracy bullshit and all that fear shit that's put there by other means, right? So having understand that, let me come up here real quick. All right, here we go. second here. All right. I should have marked this back page. I had it walk. All right, it should be right here. We go. All right, there it is. All right, so let's start right here with chaos, right? Because there's different explanations, right, of what this means, right? Right. We talked about also in the past an aspect that came out of these the 5 books of satanic philosophy, chaosophy, right? If you heard this term, some other authors and occult practitioners have used it. Also in the Black Ship book, which I know a lot of you are familiar with, by Malthus, the Pandemonium Mandela and the Demons of the Black Sun. There's a whole breakdown of the philosophy of chaosophy on there. Very, very important, because understanding that philosophy really is, in essence, a good breakdown of what we're trying to do and what chaos really represents. Because just like a lot of other things, that sometimes is misunderstood, because people hear the word chaos, right? Because on the surface, chaos is never or ever was taught as anything positive or productive. People hear that word and go, "That's, chaos is just disorder," and that's not true, right? Because that's the program definition of what it is, right? There's another error which is prevalent within traditional chaosophy, that being when we look at the God concept, right? It's important to understand, because really what they did was take these states of chaos, take these states of the void, the abyss, the Sitra Ahra, and kind of watered it down. So we're going to go through that real briefly. I'm going to stay on it too long. There's another error which was prevalent within the traditional chaosophy, that being that God is a tyrannical being, and that he out of spite curses man with all his suffering. This God, however, does not naturally act out of malicious intent, but instead acts according to his nature, just as we do our own, and he strives to maintain his existence. So that, in essence, is you. There's no different what we do as humans. We strive to maintain our existence, survive, right? So one of the first principles of chaosophy, the first law of the universe, right, or multiverses, but universe that you reside in, is self-preservation, right? So when you look at this, how much different is that concept from human? Because this same, when you look at, for an example, in monotheism, right, and in the Bible or the Quran, God is always having to continuously remind the readers and the followers that he is the greatest, right? Always has to profess that he's the great. Always has to remind you every X amount everywhere. It's just stamped everywhere, and it's always about being the best. In essence, how does that differ from what we do in our life? Right. So it's funny when people hear us talk about apotheosis, self-mastery, living up to the potential of what we're destined to be, gods and goddesses. People flip out that don't understand this path. Oh, that's blasphemous. Are you crazy? We're only doing the same thing that this so-called tyrannical being through religion does, but nobody looks at that. Well, and especially people who are embedded in religious theology don't see anything wrong with it. Right? This is part of the deprogramming process, because, see, you can't see it unless you step outside the box and view it that way. So this is why, like, when you try to talk to certain people who, like, we use the term hard-headed, they're not going to see it because they're inside the box. They are the product or the victims of this concept, right? They are the predators they are the prey that are being upon by these religious predators, right? So it's trying to show you that. And that's chaos itself, right? When you really look at it in essence, right? It's chaos on both sides of the spectrum, but it's your job to make order out of it. How do you do that? By way of your understanding, your knowledge, right? You can't do it until you get proper knowledge and deprogram the subconscious mind to give you a higher understanding, which is basically what you got to do with everything in life, okay? Everything in life, right? Let's continue. All right, let's come down here. Let's go to within chaos. There is no distinction between things, and even though suffering exists as a potential, it is not experienced by consciousness in the same manner in which it is experienced during physical life, right? Let's go through this. Within chaos, consciousness experiences the state of existence or existing as suffering rather than being afflicted by it. Instead of I feel pain, the correct statement within chaos would be I am pain. See the difference, right? That's a hard concept to grab because we've separated ourselves because we've been fed this illusion that these are different and separate, distinct things. They only become that when we create the separation. Like for an example, just to help this understanding, because I don't want to make sure this, I don't want this to sound like it's just a bunch of, heavy talk, because it's not. In the Alchemy for Personal Transformation book, the Emerald Tablets of Tahuti, right? There's a section in there, and I believe it's in chapter 3, conversation with Hermes. And there's a statement that Hermes makes in that book in the Emerald Tablets. He says, by naming God, you create other gods. Think about that for a minute. See, that's uncontrolled chaos. That's kind of what this is trying to get you to see. By naming God, you create other gods. Because we do it as humans. We create the separateness. We create the difference and the distinction. When in essence, it's connected, but we must see the separateness in it to see the connectedness. I know that sounds crazy, but that's what chaos philosophy is. It's just like I keep saying when we talk about, and what's a good way to understand this is through the isolated consciousness of Set that we talk about all the time, right? One must isolate or separate themselves from all those conformist things in order to see how they're connected. So in the separateness, you see the connectedness. But if you are the one that's connected and you're in the box, how are you going to see how that operates? This is why we say on this path, the goal, it's not promoted in any ideology that we're trying to become one with the universe, right? Not in the way that lighter philosophies teach it. Are all things connected? Yes. But my thing is, how do you understand that connectedness unless you disassociate yourself from that via the isolated consciousness so you can get that understanding, right? So when people come on this path, how that process starts to begin, you always hear people talk about who start to come on this path in the first stages of it, the first few months, could be a year, et cetera. They always describe going through a serious transition of loneliness or feeling like they're all by themselves. They're noticing a whole different way in how they feel, right? Which is very normal. And it's a sign and a confirmation that you have now, entered the beginning path of your journey. And you are starting to separate from some of those old ways, right? You start to look at things differently. Even certain people, acquaintances, some of those die out because they don't serve a purpose no more. You start looking at individuals differently, etc. How do you see that? How do you experience that? How do you gain that knowledge and know? By separating yourself from it. It's the only way. So the confusion, right? See, chaos becomes bad when it's just pure confusion and you can't make order out of it. Then, quote unquote, what we term as something negative or not positive to the individual, it now becomes a bad thing because you can't make no order out of it. You have no control over it. The illusion that a lot of these religions teach, which is false out the gate, that we're all equal, we're all children of God, right? Pay attention to all this. That it's about unifying and one love, but everything that they do is in opposition to that. Look at the state of the world today. The same people that have been promoting that loving unity bullshit are the same people that are responsible for death, destruction, war, disease, famine, poverty, you name it, right? This is the mixed message, because that's what their God brings, right? And they're quick to point out others and be judgmental, because everything that these countries stand behind as far as on spirituality and religion, and most of them is in those three areas of Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. It just seems wherever those religions and philosophies are prominent, there's nothing but death, destruction, war, violence, bloodshed, poverty. So who's really promoting destruction and confusion, right? That's how you have to look at this. This is what this is talking about here, right? In the light of this understanding, the experience of feeling suffering can only occur in the realm of the demiurge, because therein all things are distinct, and that which has distinction can impose its will onto others. It is for this reason that we fight to return all things to chaos, to remove the experience of suffering. So the demiurge is a place of being able to make that distinction. That's why I said what I said earlier in the beginning of the video. I don't promote it as a place where there's some beings and monsters called archons that can eat and destroy you and kill you, and you should fear them. That is nothing but another form of religion. And there are people out there who promote that. And I don't subscribe to that. I don't believe it. I don't accept it. It's not a reality to me. I don't give a fuck what anybody says. Because if you accept that concept, you are being a hypocrite if you believe that you're on the path of apotheosis and self-mastery. But then you're going to turn around and believe there's some beings that you're inferior to that can eat you. That is just completely fucking ridiculous to me. I can't stress that enough. Okay? So don't fall for that nonsense. It's a bunch of garbage. All right? Let's talk a little bit about the afterlife. Okay? As I said in the beginning of the video, one of the biggest is this concept of death. Right? I brought this up many times over the years, off and on. Right? What happens when it all ends? What happens when we leave here? We all think about it, and as we get older, we think about it more. Be real with yourself. Don't try to front. Don't try to front like you got it all together. As you become wiser in wisdom and you get closer to that understanding, you start to dwell on it more. Not in a bad way, but to understand it. I know I do, right? That's one of the goals. And one of the keys to mastering yourself in spirituality is to remove the misconceptions and fear of what they call death. Because how they are describing it, again, is part of the programming process, as usual. It's just fucked up how they do it and continue to use these mind control techniques, right? So let's talk a little bit about the afterlife. Returning your attention back to the demiurge, I would have you reconsider the common idea that the monotheistic God somehow escaped chaos. Pay attention to this. Created reality, and that chaos exists as some far off place to which we may return after death. We understand that chaos is the mixture of opposites, right? The mixture of opposites. And that the cosmos is the separation or the individual existence of those opposites, right? So this gives more clarity to when people say, this world is an illusion, right? That's why I always joke around and say, if you believe it the way most people believe it, that's why I always joke around and say, well, then stand there, put your hands down, and let me punch you dead in your face. You're not going to feel it because this is an illusion, right? Or wrong? Right? Or wrong? That's what I'm trying to get you to see, right? Because there's some people that go way out there to left field, to Spookyville, with that concept. Oh, this life is not real. I'm not real. Everything is an illusion, blah, blah, blah. Sounds good, sounds heavy, but most of them don't even know what the fuck they're talking about, okay? So yeah, let's continue on with this. So we understand again that chaos is the mixture of opposites and that the cosmos is the separation or the individual existence of those opposites. So let us then realize that chaos itself became split at the moment when the potential for being was realized. See that? So this is the process now where you start to make order out of the chaos. You're not negating the fact that it all emerges from the chaos, right? Or the primordial chaotic energy, right? Prime, right? Primordial, prime, root, the pristine, the top, the cream of the crop, right? The prime. There's nothing better than the prime. Like prime rib, prime steak, right? That's just making the statement, this is the best that you can get. So it all emerges from the best, from the chaos. The distinction comes from what it just said there. At the moment when the potential for being was realized, now you start to make the journey to start to make order out of the chaos. Those that don't come to that realization usually fall into some type of religion. They're followers. They can't think for themselves. They have no control over their lives. They wait to do, they have to be told to do things before they even get motivated. They're basically just going through the motions of life, just going through the everyday rigmarole, and they have no purpose, no goals, no desires. These are people that are confounded and devoured by the chaos. They haven't come to this realization of being and the potential of being, right? Soon as you made the intent and the potential and say, look, you said a lot of us, you came here because your previous spiritual paths, whether it was Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Buddhism, Ifa, Santeria, whatever the fuck it was, which is irrelevant, you said, no, there's more. And I'm disassociating myself with this as far as being exclusive to it, being a follower, a loyal servant, right? Servitude. Again, not making the distinction, being consumed by your chaos. If you're a servant and a slave, mentally, emotionally, and physically, all same shit. It all applies, but mental slavery is 50 times worse. Emotional slavery is a fuckery because emotional slavery, when I can control your emotions through fear, mind control, and indoctrination. Oh shit, I got you eating out the palm of my hand. That's how they do it. They got people in a state of emotional fear and panic, worldwide global pandemic, now an endemic. And if you go back to the video, and I don't want to talk about no fucking coronavirus, but I just want to throw something because it's connected to what we're talking about. All right. I said going back to when this shit first popped off in early 2020. I said, look, this is going to mutate into a permanent virus. The coronavirus isn't nothing new. They were stranded, the HN1, right? People were sitting there crying, oh, the vaccine. They're going to put a chip in you. Listen, you got a cell phone. They don't need to put a chip in you. They can control and track everything you fucking do just by this because there's a satellite on it. It don't even matter if you turn off the GPS. They still can track you with the chip that's inside of here. They don't need to put a chip in you. Get that stupidity out of your head. Get that fucking sensationalism nonsense out of your head because it goes deeper than that. Okay? The HN1, if you go back when that hit the scene in 2009, when Obama was president, that was a pandemic. And I'm sorry, before the pandemic, what's that term they used before? My God. It's pandemic, then endemic. The one before pandemic, I'm just drawing a blank. It was that, and it killed a large amount of people. Okay, they came up with that vaccine. If you go look and pull up the timeline, in less than 4 or 5 months, right? Epidemic. Thank you. I just caught that out of the corner of my eye, Anthony. And then people's gripe says, look, and again, as I said before, I'm not getting into the whole thing. I'm not pro-vaccine or anti-vaccine. I'm pro-choice. I am saying, do your research and know what you're talking about, right? And I don't care if you took the vaccine or you didn't. That shit is irrelevant to me, right? That's personal choice. So that's irrelevant. We're not talking about pro or anti. I'm saying do your research. Don't sit there, whine and cry, oh, 6 months was too short. Of course people are going to die. It's an experiment. It's trial by error. It's the same thing with the flu vaccine. Do you know how many people died from reactions after the Spanish flu? Because in that testing, there's going to be casualties of war. It's fucked up, but it's the way it is. But they developed the HN1 vaccine faster than they did, and that was a form of coronavirus. Why am I saying all this? Because the fears. Now they got some, I don't even, because I don't pay attention to this shit no more. Now they got some new variant of the Omicron cake. They're calling it some crazy shit. I don't know what the fuck it's called. So now but then they pump fear. The cases are rising, hospitalizations are down, but this is just another mutation of the Omicron cake, whatever the fuck they call it. So don't worry, it's highly contagious, but it's not powerful and it's not killing people. Why? Because it's mutating. What happens when something mutates? It becomes weaker and weaker. As I said before, and I'm on record saying it, go back to my old videos in 2020, this will become a permanent virus like the flu. Okay? That's where we're at. That's why it's an endemic. Now, Fauci's old funny ass just recently said, well, maybe he overdid it with the mask. Remember, at first he said, don't wear a mask. They're not safe. Then it was, oh my God, wear a mask. You must wear it all times. Double. I remember one time they were saying double that shit up. That's how fucking crazy they got with it, right? Wear 2 layers. Now it's maybe we should have just said either you get vaccinated or don't, and you take your chance and you live your life, right? I said that shit, right? And then where's all the 5G people? Where the fuck are you people at, right? Don't give them a pass. All those conspiracy, oh, it's the 5G, the 5. Shut the fuck up. You don't know what you're talking about. Shut up, okay? I say all that to say, let's get off of that because I don't want to shift it into that energy. I say all to say that it's about fear, controlling your emotions, right? Whether it's a pandemic, whether it's sickness, disease. Now they're trying to pump fear into us. World War III, right? The Russia-Ukraine war. It's always something. Then when they really tested us on a psychological and mental level, when that pandemic broke out, there was all this racial stuff going on all across the country, right? George Floyd, etc. They're always experimenting to test what can trigger your emotions. This is all part of the chaos. So if I can get you into that experiment where you're all linked in and you don't look at it outside the box the way we're discussing it, then I can control you. There's always some distraction going on to keep your attention away from what you should be doing, which is yourself, getting your shit in order. So now you got to worry about what's going on here, what's happening there, et cetera, right? That's something you must look at. So once you come, that split moment for the potential for being, when it's realized, that's when things start to change within, right? Chaos had cracked into 2 pieces, those being form and formlessness, right? The mixed duality of chaos has been transformed into the unmixed duality of the cosmos. Hold on one second. All right, so let me say that last part again, just so everybody caught that, all right? Chaos had cracked into 2 pieces, those being form and formlessness. The mixed duality of chaos had been transformed into the unmixed duality of the cosmos. Each potential one existing together within nothingness have now become 2. You see that? The have and the have not, life and its absence of death, love and its absence of hatred, the good and the evil, okay? The hot and the cold, the worlds of form and the worlds of formlessness. Chaos itself has been turned inside out. I'm breaking down too the science of the circle and the square. It's when you turn the circle inside out. This is what it's talking about when you get into metaphysics and you get into some of those spiritual concepts. It helps you get this understanding, right? Now, where it gets a little confusing or some people get lost, and this is why another thing I always refer people back, really, this is breaking down, this duality concept is broken down in the 7 Hermetic Principles of Tahuti, the Kabbalion, by the 3 initiates. That's why I always tell, that is a great book to start reading, because when you understand the doctrine of polarity, the doctrine of vibration and rhythm, when you understand all of these concepts, right, this is going to help you understand a lot of the other stuff you're going to start reading and researching. And that's why that is a classic occult work that I suggest everybody should go back and revisit and read, because that's going to give you a deeper understanding of this, because that really broke down the doctrines of polarity, duality, all of those things. You must understand it. It is connected. It is all comes from the same source, but you must understand, as this became distinct and as we created this separation, as it talks about here, how that process takes place, or how chaos breaks itself down, that's going to help you understand. But then it gets even worse, because as it got broken down and then people ran with it, out of this is what they created, this so-called distinct monotheistic being, which, how can you take that out of that? And this is what I mean when I've asked for years and said, well, religious people believe in Genesis. They believe in that story in chapter 1 that that's the beginning, and in the beginning God said, but they can't explain how God got there. They always just give you the, oh, he always was, he always existed. Listen to the game. Now you're giving this life, this energy, because your understanding is so fucking corrupted that you have to give it gender. Why? Because that's the mortal aspect of ourselves, that we have to connect with something, the man worship, right? Because their religions are precepted around what? Physical beings, right? Prophets, men, image. It's always the physical. They don't ever present anything, even when it appears to be spiritual on the surface. They take you right back down into man worship, physicality, okay? They take you away from the whole concept of understanding that this whole thing that you're trying to understand, okay, exists outside of person, place, or thing, right? But they want you to believe there's nothing that there's nothing they tell you in those religions that are not confound to three-dimensional existence, person, place, or thing, right? They fuck up when you use common sense. As I've said many times before over the years, they make the mistake and say that God resides in heaven, right? Which is confirmation that what? That heaven is bigger than God. That would be impossible, right? Not the way that they explain who and what God is, omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent, right? And then some people go, oh, no, see, brother, you're taking that out of context. Am I? If God resides in a place called heaven, then heaven is bigger than this God. Why it don't make no sense? Because when you put God in the box of being a physical being and you limit him to that, you have now made many things beyond this concept of God greater, bigger, and it just doesn't make any sense, right? The Muslims will say, Allahu Akbar, right? God is the greatest or the biggest, Akbar, right? They fall into the same trap too, okay? So this is part of the deprogramming, okay? All right, let me finish with this, and then I have one last section, and then I'll go to the chats. I'm going to finish with the Sitra Ahra, all right? All right, let me finish with this last part, short section. Now, let's talk about the other side. Having said that, understanding this chaos, right? Where does this all exist? In the subconscious mind, right? It's all there. You have the ability to access this understanding, right? Which again, now we're really breaking down in depth, in detail, the first Hermetic principle, which is all is mental. Mental is all. The universe is mental, right? It starts in the subconscious mind, right? That's why the power of the mind, thoughts are seriously important, and the type of thoughts that you think throughout the day. And it's the energy that you put out there. Not only does it affect you, it also affects your immediate environment and surroundings, because thoughts do carry energy, right? Because if you're thinking negative thoughts, you carry that out in a negative way. It makes you feel negative, so you do negative things, right? So if you're feeling it on a mental and a spiritual aspect, you carry it out physically. Science of magic. So why can't you do that in your magic and your spiritual work? Think about it. When you're in your mind about something and you're agitated, you're angry and you're mad, you can get so angry and agitated to the point that you carry it out with a physical action. Though you might not look at that as something positive, but that's really, there's a form of magic to that. So why can't you do the same thing when you're trying to do something more beneficial for yourself? Think about that shit for a minute. Think about it. And before you answer, think about it. Okay? Let's finish with the Sitra Ahra, the other side. If there is no chaos to return to after death, it is reasonable to wonder what does happen. What happens? I've said this before. What happens when you die? Where do you go? What exactly do you go through? And anybody that tries to give you a specific answer to that is full of shit. Capital SHIT. Because it's not the same for everybody. Okay? There is no one particular method of how this happens. Right? This is why there's so many theories out there. You could theorize, again, as I've said many times in the past. You can go to ancient grimoires and texts. Well, it says here in the coming forth by day of the Book of the Dead. It says here in the Tibetan Book of the Dead. It says this. In this culture, I get all that. But that still does not 100% explain exclusively what happens. Okay? It doesn't do it. You come to the realization of that understanding by going through some of the stuff we just talked about this evening. Okay? You come to the realization by way of that understanding. This is why it's personal, right? To a degree, because it's an individual's. It's not just a subjective experience because it's subjective in nature to a degree, but it's a reality to the person because they experienced, they lived it. But it's different when you try to transition that and try to pass that on to somebody. It becomes different, right? I would have you consider the non-initiate and his fate first. Know that the cycle which sustains this God force is life and rebirth. All things from the large to the small exist within this cycle. Even our universe is born over and over. These non-initiates who lack the black fire within them will be recycled and become some other manifestation of the demiurge, right? So it's not a place. What can destroy you? There's nothing mentioned here about no archons and no bands eating you. What can destroy you, as it says here, real simple, is the lack of black fire within them, or knowledge, or the black flame of consciousness, right? It will destroy you if you have this lack of understanding, right? And then it says you'll be recycled to become some other manifestation of the demiurge, right? Some other manifestation, right? And then the last section, where is it? I don't want to get into that. All right. So let's finish with this part with the Sitra Ahra, right? So we know on the surface it's what's referred to as quote unquote the other side. What's the other side? It's that primordial chaotic state, right? That state of void, of absence, of nothingness, right? What does that mean? You go nothingness, right? That just what blah, like nothing's there. So you got to get out of your mind the definitions of those terms that they programmed you with. I want to refer to something Alan Watts said, philosopher Alan Watts, that some of you might be familiar with, right? And he talked about in one of his videos, and I go back and listen to it time to time because it's a very impactful video, and he talks about death. And in that video, or in that lecture, he talks about, what if you just, close your eyes and that was it, in reference to death and nothing, right? What if you came to that realization at that moment that you get to that moment when it's all done, as they say, quote unquote, and you close your eyes, right? And the lights go out. What if you realize that your life was just a speck or a crumb of this existence, and it really wasn't as impactful as you thought, right? What if that's it? You just shut your eyes and that's it. And see, that fear of the unknown or that nothingness, it shouldn't be feared. It should be embraced, because in that nothingness, that state of formless and void, that's not, when we say primordial chaos or prime roots, that's where there's tranquility and real peace is obtained in the chaos. You see how they separated it? That's where you find what they're calling this illusionary peace on the surface. And if you've done ritualistic work with the Kabbalist, with not the Kabbalistic tree, with the Klapothic tree and the tree of death, and you know what the Sitra Ahra, the void, the abyss, and the cliff off represents, outside of some of the intense stuff you've experienced, you should have obtained those moments that I just described. I can attest to multiple times in ritualistic work, in those rituals, being just completely engulfed in that silence, that space, that darkness, that void, or the abyss. And as I was, though the physical body dissipates, consciousness is still vibrating at a high frequency. The awareness is there, but it's almost as if when you submerge yourself in that and become, quote unquote, one with the chaos that's falsely presented on the surface, all of your fears, all of your anxieties. At first, the fear kicks in because it's the unknown. Because what happens if I merge myself into this nothingness, right? So the mortal aspect of the mind kicks in, fear. I'm not going to come back. Come back to what? You understand? When you just embrace that formless void, that state of nothingness, that's when true peace takes over the mind, because all of your fears and worries, when you clear the mind as far as focus on that moment, all that starts to subside. All things that are weighing you down, you start to detach from, right? It's not an easy process to get to in your ritual work, and I'm not saying it happens overnight. It takes work. It takes discipline. When one truly experiences that, they will realize that a lot of the shit that they've attached to themselves, a lot of it, when it's talking about suffering and chaos in there, it was alluding to the point that our suffering is self-inflicted. Okay? Think about this for a minute. A lot of the suffering we go through is self-inflicted via the choices that we make. Okay? There's some of the decisions and the stupid shit we do, right? That can afflict us. That can hold us back, and that's what creates the suffering. When one understands or comes to the realization of that understanding and experience, they don't fear death no more. And I'm not saying one should strive to speed up the process and get there. That's not what I'm saying. Live your life to the fullest, right? And as I've said many times before, those connected to the death current or who really work necromancy and understand it, they're ones who have a greater appreciation for living in life, right? It's the opposite. Remember, that's how they get you thrown off with chaos, when they try to give you the complete polar opposite. And sometimes in that way that they promote it or pass it down through their systems, whether it's religion, spirituality, education, whatever, people buy into it and they get confused. All right. So I kind of just wanted to touch, there's more to it. Obviously, we don't have time to go through all of it, but I wanted to touch on that because this should be one of your levels of understanding, your approach to magic. Number one, as I said before, it's magic is practice, or it is the science of understanding one's self and their surrounding conditions. Okay. I can't stress that enough. If you need an explanation, or if somebody wanted to give a definition of what it is we do, that's what we do. Okay. All right. So let me finish this up. I'll go through the chat. If you got some questions, let's see. So now would be the time to put it in. I don't see too many questions in here. All right, you guys got to start popping some questions in there. All right. What do we got here? I'll look for some questions. All right. All right, so a comment earlier there from our goddess Isis. What's going on, Isis? I unequivocally recommend attending the Journey of the Black Adept Conference if one feels led. Solitary practitioner by default, but the group working and work experiences I will never forget. Powerful. Yeah, I would encourage, as I said in the beginning, hopefully those that are able to come out and attend, come out and attend. It definitely will be an experience for you. All right. Julie Clark says, good evening, brother. It's Bridget. Okay, how you doing, Bridget? I'm doing great. New chemo, may lose my hair again, but I feel great. First treatment, few side effects were not so bad. Just letting you know. Thank you. Glad to hear that. I know we had a conversation a couple months back. You know, we had a nice little talk. And again, I know you shared some of your experience there, but not putting your personal business out there. But I do commend you for your fight. I do commend you for your courage. That's not an easy thing to do, going through what you're going through, and many others who go through fight for cancer. I'm sure all of us have some connection to it. I know I went through it with my father, and I'm sure we have plenty of other people in here who have had some level of experience with it, whether directly or indirectly. But I commend you for the fight. I commend you for the positive attitude. And again, that's key with your intent and your approach. It's not an easy thing to do. Sometimes as we go through life and shit can go amok. So keep that fight up, keep that attitude, and I'm glad you're doing good. Good to hear that. All right. All right. What else we got? Okay, this question from Adam. There's a YouTuber named Moreno Ravenberg that states that all the archangels serve the Christian God, including Samael, and that Jehovah is the most powerful being in existence. What exactly? See, again, when you come across, and again, I don't know, I'm not familiar with that person's channel, but I can tell you just by what you wrote there, what she is you said Marino, whether he or she, I'm not sure if it's a male or female, is influenced by, right? That's that Kabbalah Hebrew mysticism, right? Golden Dawn slash levels of OTO and ancient Rosicrucianism in there. That's a philosophy. I mean, my thing is when you read that, first of all, the Samael thing is way out of line, right? Because obviously this individual, again, has a right-hand path philosophy and understanding of, first of all, what Samael is. And first of all, you would never make the statement that Jehovah, there's no such word as Jehovah, because this person obviously is very ignorant because there's no letter J in the Hebrew alphabet. So this so-called Christian God never could have been, or the correct title was never Jehovah, because if they would have did their research, they would have simply found out a few things. First of all, number one, right? Jehovah is a poor translation of Yahweh, and Yahweh, when the vowels were inserted, that didn't exist. It was just YWHW, which actually comes from the word Yahuwah, oh, he who he is. And then there was a difference between scholars where some of the ancient Jews couldn't come to agreements on this, so they referred to the creator as Hashem, right? Which just means the name, right? But we can simply just, again, you could always look in the overtones of a person's understanding. Just the simple fact that they were referred to their God as Jehovah tells me everything I need to know about that individual. It's Kabbalah, Hebrew mysticism from that perspective that they're coming from. That person, first of all, archangels, all right, from religious theology, yes, Catholicism teaches that they all serve the Christian God. I get that. But first of all, that person makes a mistake. The biblical God, whether you're Christian, Muslim, Jew or not, doesn't matter. That's totally impossible to be the incorrect name. So how can you be worshiping or serving any God when you don't even know the correct name of the God that you're serving? It's stupidity, but I get it. So I'm not familiar. Just based on your statement, it kind of gives me an idea, why that person would say that. And gnosis is to know, right? When you're using the word gnosis, it's to know something, right? You come to the understanding of something, right? It's truth, it's knowledge, right? So that person would have to really validate that gnosis, because they are in a religious school or frame of mind where we're not. So we can make these statements because we're not confounded to being followers and devotees of these faith-based spiritual systems that keep people mind controlled, right? And that's the problem again, right? With these concepts, whether that person, whether they consider themselves spiritual or not, they're still confounded to that religious mentality. See what I'm saying? There's always some hierarchy, some rulership. It's always precepted upon the concept that there are superior beings, much more superior to you, that you're inferior to. You're not on the level of the prophets, the angels, and God. You're just a loyal servant. There's some books. You must follow these rules. Here's the Bible. Here's the Torah. Here's the New Testament. Every one of them have some book that defines the rules and regulations, and then it's all under the foundation of servitude. So to me, it's just another form of religion. That's all. All right. What else we got? King Kai asks a good question. Is it better to get cremated or buried? Hands down, cremated. And I'm going to tell you why. Okay. First of all, in my family, my culture, cremation is something that everybody does, right? The burying process, you have to be careful of, right? First of all, when you let's look on the surface level first. Okay. This is a very good question, right? In certain other cultures, the process of it is very drawn out, especially people from the Caribbean, right? And I can attest to this from my wife being Jamaican. The way they do funerals is crazy. It can go on for 2 weeks. The displaying of the body. First of all, that to me is just, it creates more grief. It depends on your approach of it. It's, why do you want to remember a person at their lowliest? So let's talk about on the surface level, then we'll talk about from a spiritual and a scientific purpose, right? So the process is drawn out when you do a burial, right? Depending on the culture, it could be days, sometimes a week or two. To me, that's just ridiculous, right? Cremation process is done within a few days' time, right? Because when you cremate, you are taking it back to the source or the essence. When one is buried, you have to also look at some of these spiritual aspects. When a person is buried into the ground, now we have to factor in, if consciousness lives on, is there any levels of consciousness that's still connected to the body, even though it separates from the body? Because that's a shell of itself, or what it used to be, right? When one is cremated by the element of fire, right, one is purified. Because remember, not only does fire can just burn and destroy, but fire purifies. So in essence, that transition that one goes through, right, that happens on a more or on a level that is more productive for that individual's soul to transition on, right? And then also spiritual work can be done with bodies, because anybody that understands some of the dark arts, one can dig a body up and use it to put disembodied spirits in, because there is. So if one has the science of activating some level and using the vessel as a life force, that's another reason why you don't want to be buried, put in the ground, because somebody can use your corpse as a vessel, right? Does the consciousness fully transition on? Is it still connected here to a certain degree? That depends, right? As I said, that the transition process is different for everybody. But one thing it assures is you don't leave any remnant behind that can be damaged, right? The purification and transition process is much smoother, right? It's in line with understanding. If you understand that we are part of nature, creation, the elements, right? If you understand how this energy and transition process works, hands down, cremation is definitely the way to go. Now, again, because they're the masters, when I say them, the powers that be that are always trying to take you away from what you need to know, they always do the complete opposite. And the complete opposite is always made to look, or the wrong is always made to look right. And then the right is always made to look Wrong. That's how it works. So they'll tell you, no, you need to be put in a coffin. Think about this for a minute. It goes back to something I said earlier. What if you closed your eyes and it could all end and there's nothingness? But what if, yes, but there's a separation from the body, but there's still some level of awareness there. There's that awareness, that consciousness. So though you're not there in the body, you're aware, right? To what degree? I know this shit might sound crazy. So now think about this. What if you opened your eyes up and you were buried 6 feet in the ground? And though you may not be physically connected to the body no more, there's still that awareness, right? So as I said, what level of connection remains when one is buried in the ground, even though they've given up the physical breath, right? Because in some spiritual circles, they'll say, well, you know, when one dies or transitions on, the soul doesn't start, or the spirit is a different thing. The soul doesn't start to make the transition. It stays here for 72 hours. There's really no factual proof to validate that. That's in a lot of spiritual circles. Well, if that's the case, right? What does it experience if it's buried deep in the ground? Okay. So somebody, you understand, is playing games. So long story short, definitely better, in my opinion, to be cremated. All right. All right. So let me, shit. Okay. I'm not sure. Amazon Tuber 88 doesn't work like that. You don't charge somebody for Oshun to mount you. There's a process to that. I don't do that type of work anymore. I don't deal with Ifa or Santeria or any of that stuff. You would have to go to a Ifa priest or priestess, or you'd have to go to find a padrino or a madrina. I don't do that. And first of all, it's not as easy. You don't just let a spirit mount you. What's the purpose? What's the reason? What's the connection? Okay, it doesn't just work. I just want to be mounted by a spirit, because that can be more damaging. And this applies to anybody. That can do more damage if certain things aren't looked at and done in accordance. Because though you might feel compelled to want to do that, that could be very detrimental and damaging to you, because that may not be the path or something you should be called to do, other than the fact that maybe there's a desire to do it. So there's more to it. I don't just do that work. First of all, there has to be a rapport there with a person. That's not something you can do on the internet. It's not something you can discuss from a distance. If that's one of your goals, you need to be with somebody side by side that knows what they're doing. You just don't do stuff like that over the internet. So that would be my advice to you. You would have to find somebody where you're located. But there's got to be other things looked into. It's not just about, I want to be mounted by any spirit. It's not just Oshun or Ifa or Santeria. It could be even on this path where people are, I want to get possessed by Belial. Why? Why do you want to get possessed by Belial? There's got to be some reasoning behind that. Okay. So I don't operate like that. I don't do work like that just with anybody. And especially I don't do work like that if I don't know you and have an established relationship, and you know that you can't be side by side with that person, because that type of work is something you need to have access to that person on a regular basis. All right. Yeah. So SYOV, maybe we dissolve into the air. Maybe we do. Maybe we don't. I mean, who knows? That's the whole point. The Shadow Walker, the never ending story. Now you're onto something. Cycles. Remember, it talked about cycles, right? There is no beginning. There is no end. I did video on that years ago, right? And what does the Bible say, right? I am the Alpha, I'm the Omega, the beginning and the end. But then it talks about, but then they contradict themselves, and it talks about this character called Melchizedek, Ancient of Days, having no mother, no father, no beginning, no end. But then I am the Alpha and I am the Omega. And that is also the key to understanding this science, is breaking the illusion of false linear time, because that'll fuck you up. That'll keep you trapped in the mind state of confusion, because beginning and end keeps you inside of a paradox, right? It keeps you inside of a mind state, right? Because if I tell you there's a beginning and an end, right, that's going to limit your thinking. But then when we leave basic understanding and we go to more of a spiritual or scientific nature, and then I ask you to explain, well, what exactly is the beginning and how do we determine that and what is the end, right? So it's like if somebody draws a circle, and I talk about this all the time, and as you were talking about, the never-ending story, cycles, right? When a circle is drawn, if you were the one that drew it, or if you weren't the one that drew it, and you didn't see the person who drew the circle, you would have no idea where the beginning of that circle begins and ends. The only person that would know that is the person that drew it or a person who observed somebody drawing it, right? And that's what the representation of the circle inside the square is in metaphysics. Think about it for a minute. The circle inside the square, when we talk about the metaverse, this is what it means when, as I said before, when Masons or brothers that travel say, are you standing firm on your square, right? There's a science behind that, right? Are you standing firm on your square? The circle is nothing, the square is nothing but the circle turned inside out. So when you see that symbol of the physics of the square and the circle inside of it, if you now visualize, turn a circle inside out, you now have the square, right? And the beginning and the ending of that is only known by the person that drew the beginning point of that circle and the ending point, right? So what is that saying? The only thing that really exists is you. There is no beginning or ending because existence always existed, because you came from the formless void. You came from a state of nothingness, right? So here's where it gets a little tricky, right? And I know this might sound a little complex, but understanding and breaking linear time, that there is no beginning, no end, right? And that's what, in essence, when you look at the principle of Leviathan, it's the principle of continuity in existence. That's what the Ouroboros represents, the serpent with its tail in its mouth, right? It comes full circle, right? So you go through many cycles, right? So when you're birthed into one of these realms or cycles as you are now, the only thing that's real is you, and everything that proceeds from you and everything you accept as a reality. Everything outside of that is not real to you, but is real to others, right? And vice versa. What might be real to you may not be real to others. So you accept and reject what's your reality, right? So same thing with truth. You accept something and embrace it because it's truth to you. You raise yourself up to the realization of that reality and understanding, or you rejected it. So what something you rejected that's not a reality or truth to you could be a reality and truth to somebody else. And it's not about right and wrong. See, that's where people get confused. I'm right, you're wrong. I'm wrong, you're right. That's all not understanding the doctrine of polarity, the doctrine of duality, right? And perception. Now, that's why that last video I did before this one, last YouTube video I did, your perception is your reality, right? That's why I did that whole video, to give you that understanding. And this is what we have to understand. That's what's real. The only thing that's real is you. Outside of that, you really can't confirm anything is real. Well, you could say, my mother is real, part of you. You can say, places I lived is real. The house that I live in is real. Yeah, because you're living that experience. That's the now, right? That's the present moment. Of course, that's real, right? But 5 years from now is not real to you. Right? You might plan your future, you might have a vision of that, but it's not a reality until you live it. You can visualize it, you can see it, but it doesn't become a reality until you experience it. That's an important thing to understand. That's why one thing we deal with on this path is the now, the present moment. Yesterday is gone. That's the past, right? The past dictates the moment we're in now. We have that experience of the past under our belt. The future ain't guaranteed to come, and the only thing that's real is the present moment, right? Now, what you're doing at this very moment is the only thing that's real. Because once it becomes the past, right, and understanding this illusionary aspect of what they call linear time, what we're calling time just expands and contracts out into the metaverses or the universes, right? You always use the analogy. It's like if you throw a rock into a body of water, when that rock hits the water, there's a rippling effect. So what we're calling linear time just expands and contracts throughout the multiverses. It's always existing. It's still out there. Like I said before, if you had this past holiday season that just passed, or a birthday, or an event, or the beginning of this class is still existing. It doesn't go anywhere. It expands and contracts, right? That's where the whole thing with time travel comes in, right? They tried to show this in movies over the year. Time Cop showed it real good. That if you go back to certain parts and meet yourself in the past, you can cancel yourself out. State of nothingness, right? Because only when you made the distinction or the separate, or you separated from that, or you came into the realization of being, that's when this whole process starts. So that's what it meant when it said, if you go back in time and meet yourself, you can cancel yourself out. Why? Because it all goes back into nothingness or chaos. I know it sounds fucking crazy, but you come to this understanding. If you're locked into this work, you'll see when it comes to the suffering part, your lack of understanding and knowledge is what creates your suffering. And that creates suffering on a whole multitude of levels. And time is a motherfucker, because time will keep you in a state of ignorance, being confounded by linear time. Linear. I don't know if I'm saying linear, but you get the point. I hope that makes sense. All right. That's interesting, Shadow Walk. I see that comment. I used to pretend to be dead as a kid by laying down in the dark. You want to know why? Because inside of you, there is some silence, some peace in that darkness. I mentioned, I think on the last class, or it might have been a Patreon class, I don't know, to show you when you were in that state of the primordial darkness, the primordial chaotic waters in the womb of your mother. As I said before in the past, I don't care how old you get. What is the first thing you do? If you're laying down in your bed, you're watching TV, you're relaxing, what's the first thing you do? You go into a fetal position. I don't care how old you are. One of the most comfortable positions we lay in is in a fetal position, especially if it's cold, right? Say you're out on the couch or you're watching TV, it's cold or whatever in your room. What's the first thing you do? You get into the fetal position to get warm. Why? Because your mind and your spirit and your soul knows that's where you are at your most safest point before you came into this physical existence. The spirit and the soul remembers that moment. It never forgets it. And that was in the womb of the female, right? Or in the primordial, or the waters of Tiamat, right? Or the chaotic waters of Nun. That's what Tiamat and the Great Mother really represents. That emergence from that void, from that darkness or that demiurge, right? Because you emerged from it when you became aware, but you always know at some point, right? And using a very basic, simple definition, you will go back home to that point of origins, the other side. That's why I was talking about that in that last segment. So you never forget. I don't care how old you get. And every time you go into that fetal position, you're remembering that you emerged from that chaotic state, from chaos, from that primordial chaos. That's how you know. And I don't care. You see kids do it, young children, you see grown adults and old people do it, because you never forget. It's all in cycles. There is no beginning. There is no end, right? That's the number one problem religion makes. They always listen. They've been telling our parents, our grandparents, our great-great-grandparents, the end's coming. It's coming. We've heard it in our lifetime. It's coming. Guess what? We're going to transition on into another cycle, and they're going to still have people here talking about the end is coming. It's coming. See, there's wars going on. There's pandemics. See, the Bible talks about it, but then they leave one part out. Be ye not troubled, because this is not the end. This is the beginning. Beginning of what? Beginning of the end. So what's the real end? I'm just trying to tell you, all of it is mind control, right? Until you detach yourself from that way of thinking, nothing will change in here and nothing will change in here, right? You stay stuck in a state of stasis. That's what the sixth angle represents. And in a state of stasis or stagnation, what's up, buddy? Go, man. In that state of stasis or stagnation, one either becomes consumed by the chaos or one goes into that space of silence and darkness and can think. Because sometimes we need to slow down. We need to be in that silent space so we can gather our thoughts. Because what sometimes happens is with the constant programming, we can't sort out the important thoughts from the irrelevant thoughts. And when you do that through your ritual work, that's what I meant when I said earlier, when I go into the being consumed by darkness and that space and that silence, you're going to find out you spend a large portion, in your mind on thoughts that are irrelevant, that don't really matter. You don't realize it at the time because until again you step outside the box and view it from an outer side of the box perspective, then you can see it. You look at it, you go, oh, okay. And sometimes in that silence and darkness, we get those clarity of thoughts, right? So it's funny you bring that up because that's a funny thing. That you did that as a kid. Rabbi Ina, what's going on, brother? Good to see you here. Shadow Walker says, so do Santa Muerte give an understanding of what you're talking about tonight? The black aspect most definitely does, but you got to come to that understanding and your connection with Santa Muerte. Now you're bringing up Santa Muerte. There's many different aspects, right? She's broken down into those aspects because each one of those aspects represent a different element or understanding. But in regards to what we're talking about of this moment, yes, the black aspect is that she represents, she's a gateway deity, a bridge deity, a bridge or gateway deity to what? From the physical realm to this realm that we're talking about right now. Just like other Ampu or Anubis, same thing. Ampu or Anubis is the key, is an archetype that can be used as an elemental archetype to gaining this understanding, the realm, everything that we're talking about right now. So that aspect of Santa Muerte, most definitely, yes, most definitely. This is a good question from Atlas NYC. How does the energy of Hecate prepare you for the death current or gateway to the Sitra Ahra? Very good question. Remember, there's a trifold aspect of Hecate. Now, we just did last month, that was our ritual on Patreon, the 3 aspects of Hecate. And it's funny you bring that up. That ritual was centered around part of it, of what you just asked in your question. Well, first we have to understand she is the goddess of sorcery and magic, right? She has a threefold aspect, which ties into something that I've talked about called the Trinity of Self, right? And how she prepares one for the death current or the gateway to the Sitra Ahra, right? One, you have to understand what those 3 aspects represent. One is the mundane realm, your existence, your understanding here, and the above and the below, right? The central point of that, the middle, which is you, right? The below or the void or the abyss, the above, right? Which really is connected. They're one and the same, the above and the below, because here's the thing. And then there's the you, because it's like with the Baphomet, and I've talked about this. There's a connection there. Because though you see the Baphomet like this, I keep telling y'all, when the Baphomet extends his hands, this goes into another sign, and then he brings them in, right? As above, so below, right? And then the next statement that nobody really should expound on further, as within, so without, which means there is no above and there is no below. You understand? They're all the same thing. The spiritual planes are interwoven around you. We have to stop looking at it, one, that there's an above and below. See, people misinterpret and think, oh, so Batman's saying the above and the below. But the so within, so without, which means there is no above and below. You understand? It's all around you, right? And there's a saying in the Bible, and I can't remember what quote, the kingdom of heaven resides within man, right? So it's not out there. It's not above. It's not down there. It's not over here. It's in here. And how it manifests and is brought out by having that understanding, right? So how she prepares one for the death current, right, or the transition or is one of those gateway deities that takes you, or she can help in that assistance going through the Sitra Ahra or the other side, is by removing the illusionary aspects of the initiate. Because in order for one to be prepared and come to that level of understanding, they must have detached themselves and stripped away all of the illusionary aspect of themselves that's holding them down, that's weighing them down. The false systems of indoctrination, the false, loyalty and servitude to things outside of themselves, right? All of these different things are key components. But she's referred to as the goddess of sorcery and magic because in sorcery, you transform, right? So she is the great transformer. She is the one of the gods or goddesses that brings the individual to the self-realization and understanding to who they really are through the process that we also know in Egyptian Heka as Khepra, remanifestation. So how she prepares in a nutshell the individual, she is one of those deconstructive, reconstructive archetypes. She tears the individual apart piece by piece, destroys them so they can be built back up again to what they need to be really built. But it goes along the precepts. It all must be destroyed in order to be built back up again. And as I've said many times before, that's why when you guys make that declaration and intent to come on this path, that's what you're saying, whether you're aware of it or not. As I said before, you're saying, here I am, go to work. But your job is, as you're being deconstructed, your job is to do the work and gain the knowledge of how you can put it all back together. So, see, they're going to give you the knowledge, but you got to do the work. So that's how she prepares the individual. And the ritual we did was in line with that understanding that I just described, right? All right, Source Conduit says, have you heard of the concept that there is a front and back side of the tree, and when we die, if we have not transferred to universe B, the backside, the soul gets shelled in the clip path, reincarnation? Yeah, when you're going through the shells or the clip path, yes, that can happen. And for those that may not be familiar with that understanding and may be a little bit lost, that's why understanding is very important as you travel through all of them. But here's the understanding at the bottom of that clip path, right? Lilith takes you to the other side, because remember, the two facilitators of the tree are Samael and Lilith, right? And when you look at how the tree is constructed, right, when they come together and all in between is understood, what we call, there's something that you'll see in some circles called the infernal union, right? The merging of those energies, right? The divine masculine and the divine feminine, right? The duality, right? Remember, Lilith only, in order to gain that understanding and make that transition, or the soul, now when we talk about a state, when we literally transition, when the soul is taken or pulled through the other side, Lilith only reaches out to those who have raised themselves to a certain level of understanding. Part of her lust, right? We hear the word lust and we always attribute it in regards to Lilith always with sex and sexual energy. And that's a misconception. Right? Though there's no doubt there's a strong sexual energy connected to Lilith, but there's a high level of knowledge and wisdom and intellectual aspect of Lilith that goes beyond that you can put into words. And this is why I've said many times before, especially when you're working with the clip path, Lilith is not an easy spirit to connect with. This is why I have serious questions when people say certain things on experiences they claim they have, because they don't ever talk about that aspect. It's always this superficial, mundane bullshit. So yes, that transition, right? And when you're saying universe, whether you use that term universe B, when we talk about multiverses, we're talking about, and that's the big thing. You see this all over the place now. Matter of fact, I got to see, you guys have probably seen the commercial. And from what I read, I haven't seen it yet because it comes out next month. Doctor Strange, the new Doctor Strange movie about the multiverses, from what I heard, I did see the preview, and what I read it's about, it looks like it's going to touch on a lot of the shit that we're talking about tonight. And he says the possibilities are limited, right? You see that in the commercial. You have to understand, it could be universe B, C, D, E, F, G. They're trying to show you a concept, again, by not having an understanding, right? And whether you're using the term front or backside, meaning if the transition is done incorrect, is there other thing? Now, we're not factoring in even something they call the tunnels of set, right? You have the clip out, but then you have something called the tunnels, right? And there's work connected to the clip out called the tunnels of set. One has to go through some of those quote unquote tunnels. I mean, there's layers to this. It's layers upon layers because it's never ending, as somebody I forgot mentioned earlier up there, the never ending story. And the mind can just get boggled and you can shake your head. It literally is never ending. Because if there's a beginning and an end, the question I say again is, when is the beginning? When is the end? And how do you calculate that and based on what? You understand? So yes, there's a lot to be considered here. This path, like I said before, or over the years in many videos, this is not a path. This is not for everybody, and that's okay. And this is why I'm saying the stuff that we're dealing with here, there's a lot of shit out there, like I said in the beginning of the video, that claims to be a cult. I don't even like to use the term left-hand path, but you know what I mean when I say that. Left-hand path, and it's not. It's just watered down religious, new age, spiritual bullshit, traditional bullshit, right? This path is about thinking outside the box, beyond that stuff, right? So when we're dealing like with the tree of death, and that yes, and then when we're dealing with different concepts of how it's presented, like you're describing there, coming in through the backside, etc., universe B, there's different methodologies and concepts that are presented to help us understand this process. But here's the deep thing, right? It's tough to do this because every time we do this, it has to be done through the level of a three-dimensional understanding, which is person, place, or thing. So the question is, linear time keeps us confounded to person, place, or thing. How do we gain that understanding on a higher level that vibrates outside of person, place, or thing? That's the question we need to ask ourselves. Because once we obtain that state, that's when the answers start to come. Because we're not thinking in our mortal minds or mortal bodies being confounded to this place here, right? Through our spiritual work, whether it's astral travel in the astral realms, out of body experiences, all of those things raise us up to a higher understanding of that. So yes. What is this here? Damn. Hold on. Back up, skipped, jumped. Hold on. Okay. Shadow Walker says the Never Ending Story is a great movie that speaks of the nothing. So do you think the boy was dealing with? So do you think that I think the boy was dealing with his mother's death? That was part of it. And I haven't watched the Never Ending Story in a while, but from what I remember, that was a very small part of the process of what he was dealing with. Really, when you look at the Never Ending Story movie, if some of you guys remember that from a few years back, it really was showing, really the boy obviously represents us and the journey we go through life. Again, we have to tie into everything that we talk about, the sufferings, the struggles, and really it goes back to the mind and how the mind perceives these things. Because the way your mind perceives them and the way you embrace them and accept them and ingest them, that's going to be a detrimental factor to your understanding and your scheme and the whole role of these things, right? So when we look at stuff like that, what is your role in this existence, right? What role do you play? Ask yourself that, right? So I think in that movie, from what I remember, yes, that was part of it, but that was part of his weakness that was weighing him down, right? And that's what we have to understand. Your emotions can weigh you down. Your attachments to those emotions can weigh you down, right? Because as I said before, thoughts carry energy, and that's what emotions are. Energy, energy in motion, right? And that could be a productive thing or a destructive thing, right? So I think that from what I remember, and it's been years, I probably have to go back and watch that. I don't remember the whole thing in its entirety, but I do believe that was a small part of it. Yes. All right, what else we got? Yeah, Strawberry Chef. That is a lot of us. I'm sure there's a lot of other people here and not hear that. Think about that. What if you were buried in the ground and you opened your eyes? You bring up a good point. You got to understand when the question came up earlier about cremation and burial, right? Fire, if you understand the element of fire and what that represents, right? When you are cremated, you are going back into those elements of nature and creation, the micro and the macrocosm, right? This is why, though, the Bible says, from the dust of the ground, we came from the dust of the ground, we shall return, right? That's why people use that concept of burial, right? It's not just talking about that, right? From the dust of the ground you came, from the dust of the ground you shall return. What it's also talking about in that regards is this physical body is just that, right? This physical body is just a shell or the outer vessel that houses what's on the inside. And if you don't believe that, stare at yourself in the mirror and really study yourself and look at yourself. And if you stare long enough and you focus, it's almost like something from within is going to talk to you. And sometimes you see a separation as if you step outside of yourself, right? There's a science for that with demonic integration. We do rituals like that with the mirror so you can come to the true self or the higher self, your demonic or your personal demonic being that resides within, right? DAEMONIC, demonic being. That's in essence what it's talking about. Okay. So it's not just talking about from the dust of the ground you came, from the dust of the ground you shall return. It's not just talking about the physical body, but also what it's talking about, right? The blood and the life force. Because, as I said before, and that's getting into something else, but to give you briefly, when blood dries up, it becomes like granulated dust, right? So it's also talking about the blood, right? We all know blood dries up, it becomes crystallized, right? Almost like a dust, right? So it's also making reference to the life force or the blood, right? So very important. All right. And that's yes. Hold on, skip the music. Hold on. Okay, there we go. Okay. Shango Ray TV says, what would be the purpose for imprinting a corpse with other spirits or entities? Well, in Haitian voodoo, they do that. In voodoo, they do that. They put for specific purposes, curses, to carry out destructive works. There's multiple reasons why they do it. You can actually, they call it zombify, right? That's what basically a zombie is. It's when you take another spirit and put it in a physical shell of a body that's transitioned on. And that's why they always show a depiction of zombies walking the way they walk, because they've just been reanimated beings, right? But there is literally a ritualistic process in voodoo or voodoo that is used literally doing that, as crazy as that might seem. And it's usually done for destructive purposes, for torture purposes, or sometimes it'll be an eternal curse, and they'll put it on a person that's deceased or has transitioned on. Okay, so there's multiple in those spiritual circles. There's a multitude of reasons why they do it. It's just it's part of some of those paths. Yes, and then yes, that practice is done too. Put into objects. Pots encased. We do something on this path, coffin rituals, where the spirit's put into a replica coffin, nailed shut. Yeah, there's multitude of spiritual practices that can be done. But when I was speaking of that earlier, that's a practice that is done in some of those spiritual traditions. It's something that they've always done. Nothing to play with, though, I can tell you that. All right, what else we got? Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, the snake with the tail in the mouth. That was when I was talking earlier about the Ouroboros symbol. Yeah. Yes, worry about today, and then tomorrow will take care of itself. That's the key to that statement. Take care of today, so tomorrow takes care of itself. Okay. All Shadow Walker says, I was trying to understand death as a child, never knew why. That's clear. You know why now? Because I'm trying to get people to see, to demystify the spookism. We're fascinated with it and the unknown of it because we know that was that state that we once emerged once. So it's almost like home, coming from that, all those things we talked about earlier, coming from that state. So some of us get that awareness at a very early age. So there's nothing wrong with it. Though you may not have understood it at that time, but you do understand it now. Now it's clear. Okay. Now it's clear. Shout out to Mitchell Ford. Appreciate that. Always a magnificent broadcast. Shadow. So what time is the occult on? Do we have one? It's not on a time. It's not on a calculated time. Because if we talk about cycles, right? And these cycles are constantly happening. When one cycle ends, another begins, right? To show you why it's not on any time. Let me give you an example. Just look at mortal man-made things, calendars, right? We have different calendars in different cultures. We have the sun calendar in ancient Egypt. And then here in America, the calendar that we use to calculate time is very flawed, right? The Gregorian calendar. Where's the Gregorian calendar come from? It comes from the man that invented it, Pope Gregory, right? That's why they call it the Gregorian calendar. But just look at the basic illusionary aspect of linear time. So let me give you an example. Let's start with the days, the weeks, and the months, right? Mainly the days, right? Some months have 30 days, some have 31, some have, February sometimes has 28 and 29. And then every 4 years, when it does have 29, the month of February, they call it leap year. So where do you just get 24 hours and insert it? Where does that come from? You're not taking it from somewhere and adding it, because you can't take it from something that has always been there, existence. You see what I'm saying? So every 4 years, they say in February's leap year, they add an extra day. Where are they getting that 24 hours from? Because the other 3 years, it's not calculated, right? And that's why linear time is miscalculated. It's very inaccurate. So then we look at the clock, right? And this is how they fucking trap you. Here's the trickery in this shit. Then we look at the clock itself. Digital and analog is important to understand. They switched from analog to digital because they knew you might catch on to what the fuck was going on. So this is why everything went to digital, right? Everything's going to high technology, all these different technological advances. I mean, look at the shit. Did you ever think, if you're my age, did you ever think one of these would have existed back in the 80s? You'd thought this was some crazy, like you would have never thought this would have existed, right? When you look at the clock, there's 60 seconds in a minute, 60 minutes in an hour, 24 hours in a day, 2 and 4 is 6, 6, 6, 6. We see that number 6. It says the number of, in the Apocrypha, the book of Revelation says, behold, the number of the beast is the number of man, 66, which is the 9 reverse. I'm going to show you why I'm telling you all that. All right? I'm telling you, man, this shit's in layers. Okay? When you look at the old clocks that very few exist, and as I've said before in the past, most of them are just in public places, I believe. But if you've ever still out and about in a place where you see the old school clock with the second hand on it, right? Pay attention now, all right? It shouldn't be called the second hand, right? It should be called the first. They shouldn't be called seconds. They should be called firsts. Because when you look at the second hand on a traditional clock, it goes tick, there's a pause, tock. We'll say it again. Pay attention. You see the second hand, it goes tick, pause, tock. Tick, pause, tock. There's a space or a moment in between the tick and the tock that's not being calculated, right? Or is it? So they say 60 seconds because they're not counting the firsts. This realm or these spirits, these demons, everything that we're talking about, state of nothingness, the spiritual realm, they're confirmed. It exists between the tick, pause, and the tock. What we're connecting with is between the tick and the tock, where linear time doesn't even exist because it's not calculated. See, when you try to put something in a box that can't be put in a box, and then just call it time, you're taking nothingness. You're taking something that doesn't have any boundaries, beginning or end, or any parameters, but then you're trying to put it in a box and say, this is the beginning and this is the end. And I'm going to do this by this false concept of calculated linear time. I'm going to create a clock and a calendar, days of the week, and now it just throws people off. So we don't operate on any mortal time, okay? That linear time is just simply for that, for mortals. It's a system they created to control us. How do you know that? Real simple. You look how they do it through vibrational frequency. You have Sunday, right? What's the vibrational frequency in the air on Sundays? Oh, it's Sunday. It's a church day, a laid back day. I'm gonna just chill, do stuff around the house. There's a certain vibe to it, right? As Sunday winds down going into Monday, whether you work a job, have a business or a career, you're ready in the frame of mind. Let me show you how they fuck with you. I'm trying to tell you, it's real easy to figure out. Monday comes around, you know Monday's the beginning of the week. It's very busy. People don't like Mondays because Monday could be very hectic days because all the bullshit starts, right? Then as you get to Tuesday going into Wednesday they call hump day, right? You're in the meat of the week, right? And then the vibrational frequency changes as you get closer towards the end of the week. It's the weekend's coming, right? Some people's vibrational frequencies, I'm getting ready to go out and hang out and party and have fun. Thinking about I'm getting ready to go to the club tonight, or I'm going to a party, I'm going to go hang out and have fun. So then you start doing recreational things, right? You do things that recreation, right? Recreational things. You get drunk, you get high, you do stupid shit, you might get in trouble. Yeah, you might be having fun, but sometimes you go outside of things you can control. You do that all weekend, Friday and Saturday night, and then they restart the cycle all over again on Sunday. So the days of the week, the calendar and the time, and calculated linear time is time that they operate on. That's their vibrational frequency. And if we stay in alignment with it, they use that same vibrational frequency to keep us in alignment with their agenda. See, there's times where literally, and I know some of you experience this, when you're so locked into what you're doing, how many of us go, man, I don't even know what day it is. I forgot what day it was. What's the date? What's the day? I get sometimes so trapped in my day. I don't even, what time is it? Holy shit, it's 10 o'clock. Damn, I feel like I've been. That's how you know you're breaking the barrier of illusionary linear time. That we operate on an existence, not called time, an existence that vibrates outside of person, place, or thing. Calculated linear time. That's what we operate on. And I don't want to call it time because it's not time in the sense of what we know as time. Right? The Bible, again, left clues to it. One day is like, what? What is it saying about one day? It's like 100 years to the Lord, right? What were they telling you there? Your time is all fucked up. We don't operate and vibrate on that same frequency. That's the shit we put you on. Look, let me show you what they do. Watch this. All right? To show you it's about vibrational frequency and slowing it down and speeding it up. I've done this multiple times over the years. I use this little stylus pen. Right? To show you when you're trapped and confounded to linear time, you're vibrating at such a low frequency. See this? As this frequency speeds up, the faster I move this, the faster I keep moving that, it almost disappears because it makes itself less dense as the rapidness of the frequency picks up. Even though it's a solid, this is the science of going from solid to liquid to gas, right? The three states you merged from that got you here because you came from a gaseous state, energy state. You went into a liquid state, which was in the womb of your mother in water. You lived in liquid for 9 months before you took on a solid state, which is what you see now. You understand? You see, and that's not governed by any time. Those were stages or cycles you went through, right? And a lot of it is connected to vibrational frequency. See, when we say things are an illusion, it's just that they're vibrating at a low frequency. You only see me and I only see you because right now we're vibrating at a slow enough frequency where we can see each other, right? So now transition that into when you transition on. Connect that now to cremation as far as burial. I was trying to get you guys to see something there, right? So the answer to that question, which is a very good question, we don't operate, we're not governed by any mortal time, okay? Ginny says, I came very close to death once. It was very uncomfortable. The white light and angel shit was not my experience. Maybe I was going to hell. No, maybe you were going back into that state of tranquility and peace, pure darkness, pure nothingness, without form and void, not being confounded to three-dimensional things of person, place, or thing, where all suffering resides on a three-dimensional realm. That's where suffering exists. And when you fall in line with being governed by all of those things, lack of knowledge, right? Lack of understanding, lack of not perceiving your reality, right? Your reality. That's where it comes from. All right. Shadow Walker, I'm really grateful coming across. Okay, hold on, let me move that up. I'm really grateful coming across your channel, but all that I had in my head, you cleared a whole bunch of fear out of the way. Thanks, brother. Also need to book a session. Well, that's good. Glad I could help. And that's the purpose of the channel. I'm not, like I say, I'm not trying to recruit anybody for anything. I've said that for years. There's nothing to no organization. It's not that. It's just I put knowledge out there, and you guys take it and do with it what you see, please see fit. Not everybody's going to agree with what I'm saying. That's just reality. But for those that it can reach and it makes a difference, then job accomplished. But I appreciate that. Mitchell Ford said, what's up, B? Salute to you, brother. I've had the same dream 4 times in an 8-day span. Never had that happen. Any thoughts? Again, without being long-winded with it, I would have to, what exactly was that dream? And if it's repetitive and you keep having that same dream, there's a strong message in there that your spirit is trying to clearly convey to you. And it's got to be something of urgency and important. But I always said this is funny because, I had somebody that's in the mentorship program that I had a session with earlier today. A lot of it was building on dreams. And dreams, you have to understand this. It's never what it is on the surface, because a lot of dreams are symbolic. And never decipher that dream based on what it appears right out the gate, because it's never usually that. So I'm saying that to say in a nutshell, without being long-winded, if there was people in this dream, take note of that. Who are these people? What do they represent? Are they people you know? Are they impactful people in your past, your present, your future? Pay attention to imagery in those dreams. Are you seeing the same things, colors? Are you in places, indoor, outdoor? Take notes of all that, because all of it represents something. And it's like when people say, people that have dreams say, I die in my dreams. It doesn't mean you're literally going to physically die. It does mean maybe an old way about you is about to subside, right? There's something about yourself that needs to be eliminated and destroyed. It doesn't necessarily always mean it's a physical death, right? I'm saying all that to say it again in a nutshell. Make sure you analyze, but it can mean a bunch of things. I wouldn't know without having more details on the dream. And all somebody can do, nobody can fully interpret your dreams. They can give you advice, their opinions, and if they're tapping into spirit, they can give you some explanation. But at the end of the day, it's a very personal and subjective experience that you're having for a particular reason. And it's usually linked into the fact that there's something important there that needs to be known, learned, or the spirit is trying to show you something critical. And especially when it's in the avenue of that, where you're having it that frequent. So something, I definitely would go to work on that. All right. All right. What else we got? Damn. Hold on. There we go. All right. Exactly. It's funny, when they were burning the witches at the stake, even though they were alive, which wasn't a pleasant thing, they were doing them a favor. They didn't know what the fuck they were doing. Right? Because again, remember, they come from a culture of spiritual and mental death. Right? So if you when you go back to them times during the witch hunt, I remember, when you go back during the times of the Crusades and Salem, remember that quote, and I think it's in Deuteronomy or Exodus, which is not in the original translation of the Bible, when King James put there, thou shalt not suffer a witch to live, which is in the King James version of the Bible, which is not in the original text, that was done to justify the witch hunts during them times, right? And remember, they do everything that's contrary to what should be done correctly, right? So if you look at, man, when you go back during medieval times, the 1600s and during that era, man, they did some foul shit, and they were way off and way out of line and shit that they was doing. When you get back into that period of time, but yes, they were doing, whether they were aware of it at the time. That cremation they were doing was actually something, that they were doing that was beneficial. They just didn't realize it. Obviously, one doesn't want to experience a cremation while they're physically alive. That's a whole nother story. What else we got? Okay. Anthony Noctifero says, is there an author or authors you recommend to begin work with the clip back from the wee beginner level? Yeah, there are some authors I can recommend. I don't really think clip hop is beginner's work. A good place to start. There's a book by Asenath Mason called Clipothic Meditations. I would start with work like that. Michael W. Ford is another one. Clipothic Magic. There's a bunch of different authors out there. You can Google, a bunch will come up. Clipothic Meditations is good because it's a good introduction. Not that it's really introductory work. It is in the sense that I say that because it's a good place to start, because it uses the skill and science of meditation. Before getting into a lot of the intense work, it gets you acclimated with the energy and how to work with it. And it gives you a good understanding and knowledge. And there's some good workings / rituals that you can do in there that I think, in my opinion, are good places to start. But really, I'm going to be honest with you, in essence, Clipothic work is not really quote unquote beginner work, but in the sense, if you want to start out with something sound and concrete that really is good, with the foundational basics, that would be, in my opinion, a good book to start with. All right. Oh yeah, I do. I remember Constantine. They drop a lot of science in there, man. I even like the original, the movie, the first one. I loved the first one. I remember seeing that in the theater. I think it came out back in like 06. 05, 06 or somewhere there. They dropped a lot of science in that movie, right? Source Condor says, is Hecate as the initiator of Death Current more ancient than Lilith, the initiator of the Clipoth, or are they two different aspects of the same spirit? Well, one thing I would always say when we're working with these spirits or demons or archetypes, gods and goddesses, don't put any time frame on them, because they're again, that's the trick. You see a lot of people in other circles who debate when it comes to spirituality, consciousness, religion. There's always that argument, well, the ancient Egyptians were first, it predates the Bible, blah, blah, blah. I get it, right? But in regards to your question, there are similar aspects and likenesses between, say, Hecate, Lilith, and even Arachne. Right? In the Alma, sometimes energy can be very similar or confused as being Lilith. So though they are different aspects, yes, there are a lot of similarities of the energies of these spirits. Right? Now, as far as one being more ancient than the other, right, you would probably have to put Lilith there. Now, again, I don't think it's really important because there are Lilith aspects to Hecate. But really, when you look at all of them, you really can't put a time frame on it, because it's like when you look at Lilith, for an example, depending on who you're talking to, their point of origin of Lilith is going to differentiate. Like the mistake people make in certain circles, they trace Lilith back to the Garden of Eden and the biblical story in Adam. Right. And it goes her existence goes way, way back. You can find knowledge in reference to her very similar to Ishtar, right? They'll synchronize her with Ishtar, which goes back many years prior to that, to cultures that predate the biblical culture, right? So they're synchronized with a lot of other different names and titles, but yes, they're different aspects, but a lot of them are synchronized with the same energy and same aspects or likenesses. I don't really think it's not important in my opinion about who is here first, the ancient. I'm not saying you're dwelling upon that for those surface reasons. I think the more important thing is when we're working with these archetypes, spirits, and demons, we understand what they represent, the consciousness that they represent, and how we connect with them and work with them in our rituals. And through that knowledge and understanding, we are using that knowledge and understanding. And when we're applying it to our ritual work, we are getting the results because we've connected with the spirit, right? To me, that's the most important part, because really at the end of the day, nobody has an actual or factual timeline on any of that. Even in regards, if you're in those lesser conscious circles and they're debating about Egypt and dynasties and pharaohs, people throw dates out there like they 100% can validate because they read the shit in the book. And archaeologists made this assumption based on their research through carbon and fossil dating and all these other techniques. They're just theories. But I think in that we can get distracted from the more important thing with is connecting with the spirit, right? Doing the work correctly and getting the results. But I would have to say Lilith in that situation. All right. That's what we got. All right. And I'm going to take this last one here. Well, last two here, and then I'm going to wrap it up. So there's another question here from Anthony Noctifero. I had a dream someone I thought was Akate, silver white hair and a black hood and cloak, took my ritual sword and told me seriously consecrate this to me. And they really peeved said to me, yes. So that was a personal experience, some form of an initiation, a spiritual connection, right? Obviously, yes, it's very subjective in nature. It's very personal, but obviously that happened because there was things you were doing that was leading up to that moment that obviously were the motivational factor behind that spiritual experience. Yes. Primordial Mysticism 97 says, besides shadow work, what are some other good places to start? I just entered the chat. Well, outside of shadow work, it just depends on where you're coming from and where you're at now. So that's that. The answer to that question is going to vary. Now, if it's somebody that's a brand spanking new, again, I would start off with maybe working with things to alleviate the place that you came from, right? Like, let me give you an example. Let's just say you left Christianity, right? So I would be doing work to dispel the myth of this whole religious concept. So let's just say, for an example, meditations with Samael, the angel of death, because he destroys all of those old conformist ways. Maybe work with Set. But again, you have to be careful, because why you can't, I'm not saying you are in your question, why shadow work is so critical. You have to make sure when you're doing work, especially with a lot of the spirits and demons on this path, that you're in sound mind and sound body. So it's very important to make sure you've done this, in my opinion, before you start, period, that you do some level or degree of shadow work to understand yourself, your strengths and weaknesses, and what you got going on in here, because you can open up energy centers in your psyche, fucking with some of these spirits and demons, and it can make matters a little more complex or worse. But you can start off work in them areas, and basically it should be catered to your needs, not your wants. So I would connect with spirits of demons based on what I got going on in my life. If I need road clearing archetypes of spirits, I'd work with those types. If I need healing type of work energy based on what I got going on, then I'd work with more healing type of spirits or archetypes, etc. But that's how you should gauge that. So it can be a little tricky, but I want to stress, you should have some level of shadow work done. Because in my opinion, and this is how I teach people that I work with, before you jump into the work, and you have a better understanding of yourself, you're going to have better results. Okay. All right. All right. I think that's it. I'm going to wrap this puppy up. Again, I want to remind everybody this Sunday right here on Primordial Chaos YouTube, we're going to have the sister, the Cosmic Serpent, on. I said it in the beginning of the broadcast, the show. And I want to put it out there again. That's going to be this Saturday, April 17th, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The Cosmic Serpent, she has a check her out. I know some of you are familiar with her, some of you may not. Check her out on Instagram, Primordial Cast. Check her out on Instagram, the Cosmic Serpent. Also, she has a Facebook page, I believe, the Cosmic Serpent, to help you understand a little bit about her if you're not familiar with her. And again, she'll be sharing her experiences as a female practitioner on this path, and especially a melanated female practitioner, which that's even another experience that she could share. Because again, I don't think there's a strong female presence in the occult world. It's very man-centered. So we're going to start bringing some females on. We're going to kick it off with her. You'll be able to ask her questions. I'm going to interview her. I'm going to ask her to share some experiences, et cetera, et cetera. And then you guys will be able to, if you want to chime in and ask some questions later down the road, later in the show. So hopefully we get most of you guys here for that on Sunday evening, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And one thing too, and I think I don't know if you're still on the Instagram. I've been meaning to do that, and I'm going to get her on the show. But let me I want to plug in a piece real quick. So everybody hang tight. Hold on. All right. So I'm not sure if Mama Muerta, you still on the Instagram, but you can find her on the Instagram. Her name on there now, I believe, is see it here, Mama Muerte, MUERTE MOKSHA. And if you go on to her page, she's there. Is that the same site for your jewelry and the stuff you make? That same page? Did you just change the name? Okay, no. So it's still the same. Adversarial Divine Innovations. And I know. Some of you might know her as Mandy, but I know her for a while, a few years now. So I've been meaning to plug this in and we'll get her on the show. We're gonna she can share her experiences too. We have a couple of people I got lined up that I want to bring on, but there's a piece she made just to show you kind of some of the work she does. This was a 9 angles piece that she made for me, which is pretty cool. All right. Hey, brother Taja, man, I had an issue with my phone. I saw an old text that popped up. I got to get with you. So this is a piece that she made, just so you guys could see it. You guys want to reach out to her, and I'm going to show you the box that she sends it in, just to show you the quality of the work. If you guys want to reach out to her, and this is kind of how she packages it, just so you can see. That's personal there. She packs it in herbs and stuff. As you can see, I don't want to tilt it and lose. See that there? She charges it. I mean, she could tell you more. You can go to her site. She sends you this nice gold metallic candle. And there's a bracelet also that she made. See that right there? So I can show you that. but really charges it, packs it, and puts, her spiritual energy into it. I just want you guys so you can see that. I don't want to tilt it in the stuff to come out because I keep that stuff in there. And again, this is the piece, just so you can see the type of work that's done on it. I want to kind of put it into the camera so you can see it. I know maybe on the Instagram, but now it comes out crappy there. Go to the YouTube page. It looks better. It looks really good there so you can see it. So again, I would check her out on those pages. Again, adversarial divine innovation. So it's adversarial.divine.innovations. That's the actual page. Again, I think the other one was just her personal Instagram. So check that out and reach out to her. I know I plugged Duma in. He does good work. Mandy just started this a little while back. And she does good work. And for somebody that just started doing this not too long ago, she's gotten good feedback, good reviews, and she made this one for me, which I'm big on the 9 angles, which so check it out. You can find her on it, and I believe that's the best place to connect with her as far as that. I don't think she has a website. You don't have a direct website, do you? It's just, that's the place to go, right? Just that Instagram page. Yes. Okay. Yeah. All right. Yeah. She's actually, you can inbox her. She's in the YouTube now. You'll see her on the YouTube right there at the bottom, Adversarial Divine Innovations. And you might put your email. I don't know if there's an email. You might want to put your email in there too, Mandy. So maybe people can contact you through email or, well, I guess Instagram, they can direct message, the same thing. You don't have to put, if you want to put the email. All right. I've been meaning to do that and it just reminded me when I saw her. And then we'll get her on also, and we'll do an interview with her also, and she can share some of those experiences. We have a couple others, and then it'll be a good so you can get an experience with some of the female presence. And I know when she comes on, I can attest to, we've had some personal experiences specifically, with her here, over the last few years. So I've seen things that I can confirm, on a personal level. So that'll be a very easy interview. But definitely we're going to start this Sunday night with Cosmic Serpent. Check her also out, just the Cosmic Serpent on Instagram. Check out Mandy, aka Mama Muerte, at her page, Adversarial. You'll see it right there, Adversarial. Just as you see her avatar on the YouTube, adversarial.divine.innovations. All right. Check her out, check her page out, support her, support the work that she does. And as I've said over the years, if we know people that are doing stuff, anything that's in relation to what we do, it's always good that we try to network and get familiar with that, because we should support each other. And that's why I shout out Duma. I don't know if he's here. Raven. I know Raven's getting her stuff back in order. She makes soaps and candles and a whole bunch of different things. She makes some good quality stuff. She's got her podcast. She's getting up and running now. And I want to get her back on so she can share some of the things she's working on right now. So we got a lot of women out there that are doing shit, we have a lot of women that are one thing that the women probably do better than we do is stuff like that. They're very, very creative. That's not something I was blessed with, those type of gifts, making those type of things. My gift is doing this here. So we all have a gift. We all have something to offer. And we need to support each other in whatever that gift is, that we have. Not everybody, and do what you have, do your gift. It's not about trying to do what somebody else does. Like I always say, I can't be you, you can't be me, right? Be yourself. And so whatever talents, gifts you have, especially in relationship to this path, we need to share that with each other, and that's why, this is why part of this path is being you, right? I don't strive or try or want to be anybody but myself. And that's something that takes a while to learn, because We coming up through that program and indoctrination out of the gate, we're programmed to be something that people want us to be. And that's why some of us have tough lives and live miserable lives, because we've always been programmed to be what other people want us to be, right? And this path is about expressing yourself, right? Be yourself. Do your passion. Do what you like. Do what you love, right? Don't let nobody dictate to you what you can and you cannot do. And I don't want to sound like a motivational speaker or some Tony Robbins shit, but that's what this is, a path of self-empowerment, right? When we say self-mastery, apotheosis, it's about self-empowerment, okay? It's important. And the quicker you understand that, the quicker things will change for you. But is it easy? No, because in that process, you're going to go through some shit, okay? I'm just going to keep it real. Oni, okay. Oh, wow, you've been going for, I know you popped up here and there over the last 7 months. Oh, wow, you're a grandma. So the daughter, she had a baby, huh? Wow, congratulations. Congratulations. So let's give Oni a congratulations. She had a first, is that your first grandchild? I think that's your first grandchild, right? Because that's your only kid, if I'm not mistaken, right? But that's crazy. Yeah, that's all right. That's a good thing. That's a good thing. Well, congratulations. Enjoy. And that's probably not the last one. So, but those that know Oni, if you see Oni, she's in great shape. She don't look like a grandmother. That's for sure. So she takes care of herself. Has pride in her appearance, which is important. What we all should, regardless of how young or old we are. Okay, so that's your first one. So that's special. That's super special when it's the first one. So yeah, that's always going to have a special place. Well, congratulations on that. I'm glad to see the daughter's doing good and all that shit. And with all the crap we've been dealing with the last couple years, things is getting back to normal, man. Things are starting to get back to normal. Yeah, so everybody's giving you the congrats. Congrats. That's a special thing, man. And again, it's funny. I was having this conversation the other day. Okay, embrace growing old. Right? We were having this conversation. I was having a conversation with a female who, is resisting getting old. Right? And embrace it. You can age gracefully. Right? There's a term, age gracefully. You can't you can't fight it. It's going to happen. If you're taking care, like I've always said this, and I'm sure a lot of you guys, so yeah, just Amber, that's what I thought. I said this many times before to you guys. I'm 50 years old, but I don't feel like I'm 50 years old, literally. In my mind and how my body feels most of the time, and just my mentality, and especially in my mind, I feel like I'm still in high school, literally. I kid you not. Because that's what it means when it says to age gracefully, right? How you feel on the inside is going to reflect on the outside. Okay. So if you start convincing yourself in your mind you're old, you're going to feel like that on the outside. Right. I definitely don't feel like my age. And you know what? I'm not concerned. I'm not trying to. You can do all the dyeing the gray out and doing all these alterations to yourself to slow the aging process, Botox shots, surgery, and all that shit. It's not going to change anything. So don't fight it. But I love my gray too, man. I get compliments on the gray. Let me stop. Embrace it. But congratulations again to you, Oni. That's fun. You got grandma duties and you got some other stuff to do. So good note, good positive thing to end it on towards the night. Mandy's got 5 kids. You got to work on you. I only have the closest thing I have to I have one grand niece. That's it. I do have a 27-year-old son. I don't know when the hell that's going to happen, but I'm almost there. Yes, and one thing, remember, and one thing that we're doing in the shadow work class is we're doing a thing with music. We haven't done it yet, but people are gathering their lists together to understand. Really, it's about your cells, right? And regenerating those cells on a cellular level as far as when it comes to age. So one of the things we're doing with music right now is we're creating a playlist going back to our childhood to the present of positive, impactful songs. Because one thing you're going to find out, and I've talked about this, something that I started doing years ago called music magic, is you're going to find out listening to music of your era, especially during times in your life when you were vibrant, especially when you were a teenager, when you were younger, listening to that type of music literally can make you, it can slow down the aging process and make you younger because it rejuvenates and regenerates those cells that need to be revitalized. Because what you're doing is, especially with music, because it ties into the science of sound and vibration and frequency, when you're listening to that music, let's just say it's a song from the 80s. It could be an old Keith Sweat song, it could be an old classic rock song. You're tapping into the vibrational frequency of that exact moment when you first, or when that song was prevalent in your life. And it creates a healing energy. It's very powerful. And this is why when I go to the gym or I exercise, not only am I exercising, but I have that music in my headphones. So I'm exercising, getting physical exercise, and I'm also getting mental and emotional exercising. Okay. And it's a powerful thing, man. Music is powerful because of the sound, vibrational frequency and tones to it. So if you're listening to a song when you were a kid, let's just say it was a song your parents played around the house that brought a lot of happiness and it brings back good moments. You're tapping into the energy at that moment when you used to hear that song as a kid. That energy, you're actually going back in time, drawing that energy to yourself, and it creates a whole different vibe within you, right? It's serious, man. I'm telling you, serious. Try it, and you'll see it's a very effective method. Yeah. So, but Taja, I'm going to give you a buzz in a minute, but I'm going to hang up. I got to get at you real quick. I'm going to do it right now. All right. Other than that, I've overwhelmed my stay. Congratulations. Good to see you here, Oni. Support Mama Muerte, Divine Adversarial and Innovations. You see it in the chat there. Yeah, let's do this thing. And then I'll see those that are able to get here on Sunday. Again, if you need to reach out to me for any of the things, just shoot me an email. Again, check out the Patreon page, patreon.com/Baniti, Baniti. I definitely recommend you check out Tier 3. That gives you access to all the monthly classes. We have a few coming up this month, but definitely check that out. Also, right here, one thing I forgot to mention in the beginning, you can also become a member right here. The YouTube channel I created 3 simple membership levels. They're like $5, I think $10 and $15, and they give you different perks. Your questions come to the top. I'm going to be doing an occasional live stream here just for members only. So check out also the YouTube membership page. There's the Patreon page. These are all different methods you can support the channel. And that's pretty much it. So Sunday night, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on Primordial Chaos YouTube. We will see you here. Cosmic Serpent will be live in the building, and we will build. We'll have a nice build session. So we'll see some of you guys there. I appreciate all of you guys. Infernal blessings, and we will talk soon. Enjoy the rest of your evening.